The topic for today is the Global Startup Indicator of StartupBlink for 2018. I'm Eli David, CEO and co-founder of StartupBlink.com. This is my email. I'm also going to share it in the end of this presentation. So if you have any comments, questions, and so on, feel free. And we're at Twitter at StartupBlink, so also feel free to approach us there. Topics for today. We're going to discuss a little bit about an introduction of what we've done last year with the indicator of 2017. Going to go over key findings from the 2017 indicator. Then we're going to discuss a little bit about our plans for the 2018 indicator released in November. I'm live going to edit the presentation. Then we can discuss a little bit about how you can partner with on the 2018 indicator. Maybe a quick discussion about our community leader program and our work jams, and a special request that you can see here. As I mentioned before, your feedback will help us to build the next version of the report. So do feel free to participate. This is basically what we're building, a global startup ecosystem app and a research center. I'm going to introduce it a little bit. This is how it looks like. I'm going to share a link with you. And the map was featured by dozens of magazines and has tens of thousands of startup entities that registered. So it's a pretty cool project. Let me tell you a little bit about our main activities in StartupBlink. So basically, first of all, it's a technology. We've been working for 4 years now on the platform. Pretty complicated platform, I have to admit, when you try to put a global map of startups that is responsive on mobile and on desktop and so on. Not an easy thing to do. Still work in progress, and I'm going to send the link to StartupBlink here for you. So hopefully if you have a startup or startup organization, you can register on the map. The link is also relevant for the tables of the ecosystem rankings that you can find on StartupBlink. So I shared it in the chat. So the first layer of StartupBlink is basically the technology. The second layer is the data. As I mentioned before, we have tens of thousands of startup registered directly, co-working spaces, accelerators, startup organization, and much more. So it's kind of like the second layer on top of the technology. The third layer that we have is community, and let's say the vast majority of what we have on community is via Meetup. We have over 90 Meetup groups around the world, and I'm pretty certain that at least 60 or 70% of you arrived via Meetup. But those who didn't, I'm going to share a quick link to our Meetup around the world. So maybe try to figure out if you can join one of them if you're not already registered to the Meetup in your city. We're doing something else, by the way. We will not have time to demonstrate it now, but we're kind of working on virtual work jams, which are basically Pomodoro sessions that we're doing with participants from around the world. It's via Telegram. Interesting concept. As I mentioned before, we will not have time to go over this, but if you're interested in a link, you can join the meetups, basically the Telegram channel, and all the information about our next sessions is posted over there. So I'm sending you the link to our Telegram work jam, to our Telegram work jam channel on the chat. For those of you, here it is. For those of you who are interested in online Pomodoro sessions with other entrepreneurs, pretty good, productive way to start your day or to end your day. If you're not into a webinar at 12 o'clock at night. And the last layer of what we're building after the technology, the data, and the community is basically the research. And that's our newest layer of StartupBlink, ecosystem research. I'm going to present it here. If you would like to read more about it and also download a report, the report of the rankings of 2018, you're going to find all the information you need via the following link that I'm sharing here on the chat. So kind of bombing you with lots of links. I hope you can cope with them. And yeah, we're going to try to send an email after the webinar also with a little bit of a summary of those links. So that's basically it. That's a short introduction about StartupBlink and the 4 layers that we are currently working on. Let's talk a little bit about startup ecosystem research in general. So basically the idea of, first of all, you want to ask yourself, why is startup ecosystem research important? And the idea over here is that there is very high correlation between economic growth and startup success. Places like Israel, where I'm originally from, and Estonia, very close to Lithuania, I'm currently in Vilnius, made a giant economic jump after becoming startup hubs. So basically it wasn't the other way around. It's not that the economy was developed and then the startup hub grew. The economy was very backwards, especially in Israel about 15 years ago. And the startup hub basically that formed pulled the economy up. The same thing happened, I think, with Estonia, with the Skype Mafia and all their great startups over there. So the idea over here is that basically a successful startup hub can actually push an economy forward massively. Israel now receives a lot of tax revenues from the startup ecosystem. There are basically exits of unicorns there practically every month. So it's pretty amazing to see how a startup ecosystem can do such a giant impact on the local economy. Now, other than that, talent retention. The better the startup hub is in a city or a country, the more people stay. It's a global world. Now everyone is moving around, maybe not as drastically as I do, moving around every 2 months, but people, if they're born in a place and they're talented, they probably have options to go. Doesn't matter where they're from, they're going to go somewhere else that is better. And the idea is that without a thriving startup ecosystem, the best people are going to leave the countries and the cities where they're from. And that's a fact. And I see it, by the way, a lot in Europe, in places like Lithuania. About 30%, I'm giving a number I'm not confirmed on, but 30% of the population is not here. They just left. And those are the good 30% that actually could get a good job. And they went to London, they went to Germany, and so on and so on. It happens in other places like Bulgaria, other places in East Europe. The good people are leaving. If the startup ecosystem is not up to standards, the country and the city are losing its best people. And governments are aware of this. So this is becoming a major priority. So we talked a little bit about why startup ecosystem in general are so critical for the economy and for the country. Let's talk a little bit about why startup ecosystem research is important. And the idea over here is that good quality startup ecosystem research allows decision makers, governments, municipalities, and also entrepreneurs to make decisions that are critical decisions. So I'm just going to bring up 2 scenarios. First of all, governments who are looking to improve their startup ecosystem cannot do that without understanding what is the current status of the ecosystem, hopefully in a regional comparative way or a national comparative way. And that's important. So governments and municipalities need this research. But let's talk a little bit about the entrepreneurs. That's even more interesting. Entrepreneurs who are aspiring to build great things cannot stay in a mediocre or a weak startup ecosystem. Period. End. There is no discussion about it. If you're trying to build something big, Uber or whatever, you're practically insane if you're going to stay in Central Europe or East Europe. You have to transition to San Francisco, London, Tel Aviv, or whatever, but one of the top 10 or 20 startup ecosystem in the world. If you want to build something big, it's almost unheard of to build something big in a smaller startup ecosystem. So the idea is that you as an entrepreneur, you have to check according to your goals in life, if you're in the right place. And if you're trying to build something big, this is critical. For example, StartupBlink is more of maybe a lifestyle business, so it's totally okay that I'm here currently in Vilnius. But if you're trying to create a real dent in the world, no, you cannot stay in places like Vilnius. You have to go to San Francisco, New York, Boston, Tel Aviv, Berlin, London. So entrepreneurs who are shakers and movers have to go to those ecosystems. I have to say that even if you're working on a lifestyle business, if you're stuck in a bad startup ecosystem, 0 cents. Even a lifestyle business requires high quality of talent. good people, and clients. So again, the startup ecosystem is critical. So I hope we agree that a good startup ecosystem is important, and good research on startup ecosystem is also important. And I'm going to jump to the QA to see if you have any questions, or in the chat. I see we have maybe something. So Francisco is asking about, do you consider there could be some overlap with your work with Startup Genome Global Startup Ecosystem Report? Maybe. I'm going to try to address this later, but I'm just going to say the following. The amount of research that there is on startup ecosystem is incredibly limited. And I'm going to talk about the differences between StartupBlink report and Startup Genome, but it's highly unproductive for the global startup ecosystem to have only two of those. And currently there are only two, Startup Genome and ours. It's not a good situation. Basically, I'm really hoping that in about 2 or 3 years, there are about 5 rankings or researchers that use different methodologies. Currently, it's extremely limited. And I'm in connection with the guys from Startup Genome, great guys, and they think the same. They think that basically there is too low amount of research. And very soon we're going to discuss about what is different in the approach that StartupBlink is taking in comparison to Startup Genome. Both of them are high quality reports and methodologies, but very, very different. And I think that the more different researchers that we have, the better we all are. So hopefully I can answer this question a little bit later, or maybe even very, very soon. Let's see. Okay, we talked about that. What is unique in StartupBlink annual startup indicator? So we jump right into the question. But before that, I want to just show you how it looks like. Basically, those are tables that appear below the map on startupblink.com. And if you scroll down below the tables, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you later. But basically, you're going to see those giant tables. You can switch between countries and cities. And basically, based on the parameters or those columns that you see over here, there is total score and a ranking of over 900 cities and more than 100 countries. So it's kind of like important to say. So let's go back to what is different in what we do. So, or what makes us in a unique position to also build some kind of an indicator on rankings. So first of all, what we decided to do is to go on hundreds of locations. Instead of just featuring the top 10 winners, we have basically more than 900 cities and more than 100 countries. And this is something that no other research has. This comprehensive approach of not featuring the winners, but also showing, for example, if you're from Vilnius, where is Vilnius currently located in the world, in the startup ecosystem? I checked today, by the way, I had a call with someone, a startup ecosystem developer in Vilnius, and it's 70. So the idea is that for the first time, there is some kind of a resource that allows you to see where is Vilnius, where is Zurich, where is Medellin in Colombia, and so on and so on. Where is Colombia in general ranked in compared to other places? So I think it does bring a very fresh and unique approach that shares information that was not readily available before. Now, one more thing that we do is basically the combination of the technology, because we have this platform of startupblink.com, and the data and the community allows us to have a lot more data points as we're building this ranking, and specifically tens of thousands of data points, internal data points of people that are putting information there alone. And the idea over here is, again, that we rely on real data and try to avoid making assumptions. I don't know if it's good or bad, but basically we love math. Okay, I flunked math in high school, but currently we love math, and we think that we should not make too many assumptions. By assumptions, I mean rely on surveys and so on and so on. We do zero surveys. And I know that other researchers are doing a lot of surveys. I can see the value in this. We don't deal with this. We just run algorithms because we think that surveys might go a little bit skewed into a direction that is not necessarily real. So again, this is another type of approach, and that's what we're doing in a unique way, I think. And that's why it's kind of valuable. So hopefully that answered the question. And let's move on to, let me see if I see that we have another question from David. So David is asking if there is a pull from the big ecosystems, what can smaller startup ecosystem do to improve their standing? So David, this is actually one of our key findings. They should be awesome. So you're going to see later that in the top 20 countries, 8 of them are small countries of less than 10 million people. So the idea is that this is not a lost fight. Small ecosystems like Israel, Estonia, Finland, Singapore, and so on are doing extremely well, and people are going to them instead of leaving them. So it's not a lost fight. It just has to, you just have to be in a situation that you create a good infrastructure for a good ecosystem, and good things will happen. You're probably not going to win San Francisco, and whoever goes big, building the next Uber, is probably going to go there. There is no other place. But on all the other types of startups, 99% of them, being in a small, healthy ecosystem is more than something that is doable. So the idea is that it's not a lost fight. It's been done, and it's happening all the time. The idea is just to play it smart by the governments and the entrepreneurs themselves in an ecosystem. And we have another webinar about building an ecosystem. I will probably supply better answers in this webinar, but that was kind of a short version of the answer. Okay, so we're moving on to the methodology of what we're doing. So basically the indicator that we've built in 2017, and that's probably going to be our methodology for the November 2018 ranking and report, the indicator, is based on 3 different pillars. The first one, and I showed you this in the tables, I'm going to jump to the tables. You see that it's divided to quantity, quality, business, and total score. So if I jump back and do a quick introduction, I will not be able, due to short time that we have, and me wanting to sleep desperately, I will not be able to go over the methodology in very big detail. But I shared the blog post with you where you have a little bit of more methodology elaboration, and most importantly, a link to download the report, which, you know what, I'm going to make your life easier and share over here as well, the direct link where you can download the report. So just a second, let me see if I can locate it. Yes, here it is. So I'm sharing it on the chat. So if you're interested in going deeper into the methodology, it's here. I sent it on the chat. And that's a PDF report of 2017. So methodology, let's go over quickly on the 3 major components. The first one is quantity. Basically, what are we doing? We're taking the tens of thousands of startups, co-working spaces, accelerators, tech reporters, and what have you, organizations that registered on the map, and giving a score based on the quantity. Again, we're in a very unique position of having this platform. So people are registering on a daily basis, and that's super helpful. We have a really nice sample of tens of thousands of entities. We also give different weights. So for example, an accelerator is going to count a lot more than a startup because they're really supporting innovation and so on and so on. So, but that's basically a simple part, the quantity part of all the entities that are participating. After that, we do the quality. The quality is more complicated. It has to do with a lot of moving parts. I'll give you an example of quality. Basically, we're saying, okay, quantity is not enough. So it's good that Zurich has 100 startups, but how good are they? And we're running a few integrations to actually make sure that the quality is good enough. For example, we have a partnership with SimilarWeb, which allows us to kind of figure out how popular are the websites. And we're doing other stuff as well on the quality, for example, checking the amount of unicorns per city and so on and so on. So the idea is after we did the quantity part, we're going on the quality. How good are they? How much of a dent are those startups doing in the world? And then the third part that we're taking into consideration is the business environment. Over here, we're doing a lot of things, the critical mass of startups in a specific city, doing business indexes and so on to kind of check what's the situation in the city. Over here, I have to admit, we're doing a little bit of assumptions. For example, that if the doing business rank of a city is high, it's better for the startup ecosystem. But we're trying to keep those assumptions on a very, very rational and basic level. So all of this is being pushed into one giant algorithm and chunking out results for hundreds of cities, almost 1,000, and more than 120 countries. So that's a very, very brief view of a complicated algorithm. I have to say, we've been working on it for over a year, and we're going to continue working on it. So a little bit about the traction so far. So we have downloads for thousands, many thousands of decision makers, entrepreneurs, government officials, universities, organizations, and so on. Dozens of press coverage. This report is actually gaining a lot of traction. Other than that, like you have, other than the press, you have some government officials that already spoke with us and also published the results of the report. For example, for our friend from Vancouver, you have Navdeep Bains, the Science Minister of Canada, that sent a notification about Canada being third in the report. So it's helpful for governments and municipalities to kind of figure out how well they're doing, and we see downloads from them every day of the report. And that's how it looks like. As we mentioned before, let me see if we have more questions. So we have to David is asking if you have to self-identify to get ranked in your system. By self-identifying, the only thing that you're being required to do is basically to register. The registration is free. So if you have a startup, co-working space or accelerator, you can either register it, or we're going to speak later about how to help your city or country to grow. That's a good question. But the idea is that we are currently only allowing direct registration on the platform to make sure that the quality of data is high. There is one more thing that we're doing, I have to talk about this, is that we're also partnering with municipalities and governments and startup organizations that are giving us data on the best startups that the ecosystem has. We put it into the database, but this is a very unique case. Usually we only allow people to register. Why do we do that? Because much of the startups that register, we do not accept, because for us, they're simply not startups. So about, I think 70% are being rejected. So for us, the registration is very important because it's our way of kind of making sure that the quality is good enough. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go a little bit over the map. A little bit go over key findings and some interesting things that arrive from the report. So let me know when you see my screen and when you see the map, so I know that we're on the same page. So just a second, I'm going to share the map. So can someone in the chat please confirm that you can see the map? That would be great. Just send me a quick message. Thank you, Kurt. That's amazing. David, Todd, pretty cool. Good. So that's the map. Basically, over here you can add your startup or co-working space or whatever. Also 461864 is confirming that you can see that. So that's great. We have a lot of help from the crowd today, so that's awesome. Now, what do? You basically scroll down, and over here you have the tables. Now, the tables currently are showing cities. You can switch here to countries, between countries and cities, and you can also search for your city easily. For example, we talked about Vilnius. You start typing Vilnius, and you can see that Vilnius is number 70, located 70. So it's pretty easy to use. You can see the quantity score, the quality score, the business score, and the total score. Let's go over a few key findings. I have to say that we're going to go only on the top ones because we don't have a lot of time, but the fun part is actually to scroll down and see the weird things that you see and the weird cities that you see that you didn't even think that exist on below 100. So it's pretty interesting. And I learned a lot about geography from these rankings. I have to admit that's one of the top parts now. So I can do a lot of location trivia now. Okay, let's have a quick look on the results. So interesting, when you run a mathematical business model, I know a lot of people are talking about the United States going a little bit down, that the policies are not there and so on, but the results are pretty astounding. The United States cities, mainly San Francisco and New York, are crushing it. Like San Francisco is almost 3 times better than New York in the total score, and almost 10 times better than London, which is doing great on number 3. So whatever is going on in San Francisco, I honestly do not see any city other than New York that is getting a little bit close, but not nearly close. It's like totally different planet in a way. So you can see it from those numbers. We haven't played with it. This is basically, we're kind of hoping to have a fun, interesting result, but there wasn't. Basically, San Francisco is basically a totally different league from all the other cities in the world without anyone coming close. The second one is New York, and that was kind of surprising for us, but New York is doing extremely well. Some really amazing unicorns that they have, and it's becoming a very strong ecosystem in the States, just like you have San Francisco on the West Coast, you have New York on the East Coast, and those are the power hubs, let's say. The third one is London. London is doing extremely well on the third spot in the global ranking. By the way, this is the reason of why United Kingdom is second, because of London. And it's kind of funny because there are no other cities in the United Kingdom that are actually even close. Let me have a quick look. I can do, yes, over here, when I search for United Kingdom, you see that London is third in the world. And after that, you have Manchester in 98. So, and then you have Cambridge at 104. So basically the idea here is that London is basically the English or the British startup ecosystem is basically London. And that's kind of scary, by the way, because of the dependence on one city. And it's a very, very strong city. After London, you have Los Angeles, surprisingly, doing extremely well. Berlin in Germany, great momentum at number 5. Boston at number 6. Tel Aviv in Israel, number 7. Chicago, Seattle, 2 more American cities. Paris doing well at number 10. Toronto in Canada, Austin in the United States, Beijing in China, Moscow, Russia, Stockholm, Sweden, really good ecosystem, good momentum, Atlanta in the United States, Barcelona in Spain, Amsterdam, Vancouver in Canada, San Diego, Bangalore, the first city in India, Shanghai after Beijing, the second city, New Delhi in India, a little bit after Bangalore. Usually the capital city is the strongest. In India, it's not the case. Bangalore is winning. And a few more interested in Sydney in 25. Japan, Tokyo in Japan, only 29. Pretty disappointing. Melbourne, another Australian city. By the way, Australia is really cool because they have a lot of cities. So there isn't one dominant city on the global scale, but just like Canada, by the way, there are a few very powerful cities, maybe not the most strong in the world, but when you take this and this and this, you can actually see that Canada and Australia are doing well because of the diversity in the cities. And then you have in 31, the first South American city, Sao Paulo. Many interesting things here, just browse through. There are 900 cities, so just browse through when you have the time. Now, countries. Countries, not surprisingly, United States is number 1, and we know why, because of San Francisco and New York more than anything, but you've seen a giant list of other cities as well in the United States, so that's kind of an interesting thing to note. The United States is way ahead. Like there is practically no competition. Then you have United Kingdom, the second one, very respectable. And we're going to have to see if after Brexit, United Kingdom stays the second. So pretty interesting. Then you have Canada, surprising. I have to say, I didn't think Canada will arrive at the third location, but they did. And they have a nice diversity of really good ecosystem and a great momentum. I'm kind of interested to see if in the 2018 report, I actually predict that Canada is going to be second. But that's only after we run the numbers we're going to see. Then at the fourth location, we have Israel, the startup nation. Really a surprising country that out of the blue basically generates world quality startups on a monthly basis. Germany is doing well on number 5, Sweden, Switzerland, surprising, by the way, Switzerland, I didn't know, but they have a lot of unicorns and that helped a lot to the ranking. Denmark, also another small country that is doing very well. France, 9, I have a feeling they could have done a lot better, so it'll be disappointing for me. I was sure France is going to be above Canada, but the numbers tell a different story. Singapore, a super small ecosystem, doing extremely well. Australia at 11, China at 12, and I think China is probably going to climb up in 2018. Estonia, a very small country of less than 2 million people, ranking in 13. Spain at 14, a little bit disappointing, I think, for Spain. A lot of talent there. Netherlands, Ireland, South Korea, Russia at 18. Also surprising, I think, that to see Russia at 18. A lot of very smart people in Russia. The guys who program Telegram are in Russia and so on. So if it would be, I guess, more open ecosystem, it would be much higher ranked because they have the talent. Finland, another small country at 19, and Japan, disappointing at 20. The innovation that they had in the 80s that were probably the best innovation in the world, in the startup world, you can't really see a lot of very successful Japanese companies and startups. Let's go over a few more countries just to have a taste. Poland at 21, Lithuania, where I am now, at 22. Thank you, Startup Lithuania, for a lot of information that you supplied and kind of bounced Lithuania, I have to admit. Our partners in Lithuania. Austria, 23, Italy, Portugal. Portugal has good momentum. I have a feeling they're also going to climb, but a lot is happening there recently. Czech Republic, Belgium, Romania, doing well, 28. Hungary, Mexico, the first one in South America. Bulgaria, United Arab Emirates, the first one in the Middle East, if you don't consider Israel. That is kind of in another scope. Chile, another South American country. Turkey, 34, a lot more potential, I think, for Turkey to be higher, but a little bit of a geopolitical situation that doesn't allow that. Ukraine, another country with geopolitical problems, but they're doing actually surprisingly well. Greece, the same. India, very disappointing at 37, and we're kind of hoping that it will increase. A lot of what India is experiencing in our rankings is because of the business environment, and you can see 650. It affects the results, and if they would have a higher business environment ranking, they would be much higher. So, and I think that they do, because the new World Bank rankings that were published on India are showing giant improvement by the government, and that's going to reflect in 2018 report. I think you're going to see India much higher. South Africa, the first African country, at 38. Brazil, Argentina, very disappointing for both of them. A lot more potential to be higher. Yeah, just check the research later to go and see who is number 100 and so on. Pretty interesting. For our friend in Medellin, Colombia is 47. Not bad, but also not amazing. Let me see if we have more questions on the QA. Parsa is asking, there are a lot of startups in Montreal. Why its rank is 34? Because you have a lot of American cities with a lot more startups. That's basically the short answer. 34 is not so bad. You have to remember this is a global ranking. So when you take all the Tel Avivs of the world and the Berlins and Londons and all the American cities like Seattle and Portland that are not so famous but have great ecosystems, it makes sense that Montreal is only going to be ranked at 34. Canada in general is ranked third, but the cities are ranked relatively low. But the reason why it's ranked third in the world is because they have Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver that are all ranked in the top 50. So all of them are not big global startup ecosystem hubs, but together the power of the diversity is pushing Canada up. So great. Now, what do we do? Let's see if we have more questions. I think we're pretty much okay, and we can go back to the presentation. So just a second. Let me reshare my screen on the presentation. So just a minute. Okay. So we're back to the presentation, and let's see if I missed something on the key takeaways, because I think we went over most of them. USA is simply another league, mainly San Francisco. We talked about that. Small countries can be very successful. We talked about small countries in the top 20 of less than 10 million people: Israel, Sweden, Singapore, Estonia, Denmark, Switzerland, Finland. Small countries can rock if they know how to manage themselves. Native English speaking countries like Canada, United States, and the United Kingdom, they're in the top third and free. And I think it's easier for them because if English is their native language and they're already in big markets, it's pretty easy to kind of move ahead fast. So there is an advantage of being native English. Relatively disappointing rankings in South America. Mexico is the first, ranking at number 30, kind of low. Europe is doing extremely well with 20 countries out of the top 30 countries at the top, including Russia, which I don't know if the Russians would like to be in the Europe list or if Europe would like Russia to be in the European list, but in any case, 20 out of 30 are European. Asia is also doing well with good momentum, led by Singapore at 10th, China at 12th, Australia at 11th, South Korea at 17, and Japan at 20. So that's pretty cool for Asia. Africa, just like South America, is doing not so well. They do have 4 representatives in the top 60 countries. South America is first at 38. Followed by Kenya, Egypt, and Nigeria, ranked 33, 34, 57. That's basically the rankings. Good. Let me see if we have other questions on the QA. So just a minute. Okay, so we have a question basically from about, do you account for local rents and living costs in your ranking? That's a really good question. I got this in the other webinar as well. No, currently we don't. We will in 2018. I have to say I'm a little bit worried of giving a premium to low-cost countries, because I know San Francisco is crazy high on the costs, but the idea over here is that basically the assumption that low cost is good for startup, basically I'm doing it all the time, I'm going to low cost country, but the assumption that low cost is good for startups, I'm not sure we can make it. We're gonna probably make it and give a premium for low cost location and give a little bit of a punishment for very high cost locations in 2018 indicator. But someone told me, you know, when I was visiting Munich in Germany, that's a very expensive German city, they told me, you know what's good about Munich? If your startup is not good enough, it dies very fast because you don't have the cost of life here to kind of have a zombie startup that is not successful. So I'm a little bit worried about this. We're going to insert it in 2018, but it's going to be very mildly inserted because it's kind of an assumption. There is something good about high cost of life. If you have a startup that doesn't make sense, you'll kill it in 2 months instead of dragging it for years. So that's kind of the thing to think about. David is asking, how accepted have your metrics been by startup communities and the various startup ecosystem? Because there is not a lot of research. I have to say that we're receiving feedback and we're working on it, but we decide what is accepted and what is not, because there is no really common ground to what is accepted or not. So we're doing our best, but because there are not a lot of efforts like ours, we kind of have to set the rules, and we get feedback from people telling us, okay, this makes sense, this makes less sense, but there isn't really a lot of, you can't really say that the ecosystem has accepted metrics. Nobody really knows. So we're just doing our best, and that's what we talked about in the beginning, the importance of having many, many methodologies to test rankings and so on. Are important. And that's why I think we need more researchers, just like Startup Genome and StartupBlink, to allow us to get more ways of thinking here, because the amount of research there currently is very limited and not good. So hopefully there's going to be more of that. Enrique is asking about zero score means that we don't have information about the quality or quantity of the startup ecosystem. Yes, it does mean that. So if you see zero score, it basically means that it's in the scope that we can't really rank it. That's why we kind of stopped the ranking at 900 for cities and 125 for countries. So that's kind of like what we're doing. Okay, moving on to what are we going to do in 2018? What's the plan? The upgrades on what we have now. So I want to again say that we're going to try to be careful not to do too many assumptions, and I'm scared that we're going to make assumptions. And for example, that speaking English is important, low cost is good, or so on and so on. So we're going to be careful. But some of the things that we're going to do are as following. First of all, the first thing that we can do is trend analysis, because we have the results from 2017, and we're going to have the results from 2018. For the first time, we can actually say what is the momentum of an ecosystem. It's currently going up or down. So it's pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot more information per city. There's going to be more integration with other sources that will allow the algorithm to be more precise, like SimilarWeb. We're hoping to have much more integrations like that. We're going to have more partners per city. We're opening a partnership programs for governments and municipalities. So we can see a lot of interest there, and basically we're going to have a lot more partners that will support the specific research of their ecosystem, which will allow us to allocate more resources to the research. We're thinking about having accelerator and co-working ecosystems rankings. The co-working one will be together with coworker.com, one of the biggest directories in the world for co-working. And the idea is to also rank the co-working ecosystems and the accelerator ecosystem in each city. And what we talked about before, cost of living index, probably going to do that. And we're going to do it with our friends from expatistan.com, which has amazing information about the cost of living in countries and cities. That's kind of like a little bit of the plans that we have for 2018. And we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to that. Now, how can you help your local ecosystem grow on the rankings, which is interesting. So basically, the first question is, why should you help? So we talked a little bit about the importance of helping before. The idea is that your startup, if you're an entrepreneur, will grow if your startup ecosystem grows. There is no question about it. So you want to have a good startup ecosystem. Having a good startup ecosystem is not enough. You need other people to know that it exists. So this research is one of the ways to kind of get the word out about the ranking of your ecosystem. Now, I personally think that a little bit of a patriotism is not so bad, you know, to be proud in the location of your city and country and help them grow. Good, you know, so why not? It's fun, just like a football game. And keep good people in your city. This is critical. People are leaving bad startup ecosystems or ecosystems that have bad reputation. So why not keep the good people and actually drag amazing people from other countries and other cities? Makes a lot of sense. So how can you help? For individuals and startup entities, easy. Kind of the first thing you can do, just insert your startup, your co-working space, your accelerator in the map. That's great. And the second thing you can do, which is much more powerful, is go to your city in StartupBlink, check the first 10 startups and ask yourself, whoa, which startup is not there? As I mentioned before, the quality score has a lot of impact here. So the popular startups are going to make a lot of impact. And then you can just insert those startups to the map. And you can mark over there, this startup is not mine. So it's going to be a floating startup that someone's going to have to claim, but it's going to be taken into consideration in the ranking. So that's something that you can do easily to really boost your startup ecosystem. Now, about governments and the startup organization, you can become a city partner and basically support the research of your own ecosystem, team up with us, and also get exposure for your activities. So I'm going to share a link to the partnership program. It's exclusive of only one partner per city because we don't have the bandwidth of working with more than one organization. So it's basically limited to only one, which will also have the exclusiveness on the next report if you wish. So that's, I'm sending it in the chat. This is what I sent now in the chat is the partnership program for municipalities, governments, and organizations that are basically funded by the government. So that's kind of your ways of helping the ecosystem based on who you are. Let's see if we have more questions. Okay, so we have more question about do you take into account the easiness of immigration to a startup ecosystem country? Great question, again. I will not take this into account because basically my intuition says that immigration is great, but it's an assumption. I will not make this assumption because I don't know enough. So the idea is that now, for example, the United States is making life very difficult for people to immigrate based on startup visa, always also, not only now, but always. And they're number one in the world. So can I make the assumption that if a country is accepting all the immigrants in the world, it will have a better startup ecosystem? No, I don't want to do that. So we're careful. We're very careful of making assumptions. Intuitively, I think it is true that the more open-minded the country is and the more it accepts talented people, the better. But I'm not going to make this assumption on the report. But great question, nevertheless. Parsa is asking, what is the advantage of being a partner of StartupBlink? I think you're asking about the governments and the municipalities. First of all, get exposure for your effort in the city and country section because many thousands of people are downloading this report and you kind of want to probably be there. So when people are downloading it and they want to know who should they talk to in the startup ecosystem, if they want to promote their corporation and so on, create more jobs, they're going to come to you. And second of all, by supporting the research, you allow us to better investigate your startup ecosystem. And that's something that is good. And it's also going to be on the map as open source. So there are many, many reasons of why to partner. I shared the link, so just go over it. And if you have any questions, send me an email to eli@startuplink.com. So all the benefits are there, and there are many benefits. As I mentioned before, it's only one per city because we simply cannot work with more than one. And basically, that's it. I think that was a long one, but very interesting. Good questions from all of you. So I thank you. And the questions that I couldn't respond, there were a few of them. Just send it to me at eli@startuplink.com. I'll be happy to address them. And yeah, register a startup on startuplink.com and we'll be in touch. Basically, the research of ecosystem is thrilling and it's fun. And if you can take part of it or help us in any way, that would be great by insights and so on. You gave me a lot to think about, by the way, for this session. So basically, that's a good thing to think about. So thank you. And hopefully we'll see you around in the next webinars that we're going to run. We're running a lot of webinars, so it's always fun to connect with people. That's it. Have a good night. I'm going to sleep before I collapse here, so enjoy. Thanks for arriving. Bye-bye.